Hey guys, in this part of the section, we're going to be talking about variables. Now, variables are used to store data so that it can be later used in a program. So I'm going to show you guys an example real quick. System.out.println. Remember that we're going to be printing out John is 20 years old. Now I'm going to play that. And as you guys can see, we get John is 20 years old. Now let's say later on we want to print out John again, but for something differently, print line, and we're gonna say John went to the park. So we don't want to keep writing John all the time, every time we need to write John, right? So we actually going to store that John in a variable called, we can give it a name, first name. As you can see, I'm using what we call camel casing. When you name your variables, the first letter of the name of your variable has to be a small letter, and the second word has to start with a capital letter. That's how we name our variables. So first name is equal to, and we use these double quotes, and we're gonna give this a value of Josh. But as you can see, it's not compiling. So I want to show you first what I did here. I said first name, which is the name of our variable, is equal to Josh. So what I did was assign this Josh in this word first name. So as you can see, guys, I'm using these double quotes over here to store what we call a string, because we're storing characters. So when we store values like characters, multiple characters, we call that a string. So as the reason why it's not compiling over here is because we have to specify what data type we're going to be storing in a variable. So in here, since we're storing multiple characters, we call that a string. This string data type, it starts with a capital letter. Make sure it starts with a capital letter, not a small letter. And then instead of printing out John here, we're just going to print out first name. And then we're going to use this plus symbol to add it with this sentence. We are concatenating. This is what we call concatenating. So you're adding two strings together. We're adding this string over here along with this one. So now we can also replace this with first name plus went to the park, and make sure that there is a space over here, because if there's no space, I'm just going to show you real quick. And when we run this, we get Josh is 20 years old. Now if you noticed here, there isn't space because we have removed that space over here. So make sure that there is a space, and we're going to get the output that we require. So Josh is 20 years old. Josh went to the park. So as you guys can see, that we have stored a string inside a data type, inside a variable called first name. So this is the name of a variable, or as we call it, an identifier, but I'm not going to call it that. If you're in university, you can call it that, or somewhere else, but I'm just going to call it the name of our variable. It's called an identifier. And we're going to create another one to store age. We want one that stores this age over here. So age is, now instead of using these, we don't want to use these here like 20 years old, because we're now dealing with numbers. Now when we're dealing with numbers, we are not going to store them in a string. So we only use double quotes when we want to store stuff, when we want to store string values. So we remove this, and we use, since this is an integer, we're going to use a data type called int. Now that one allows us to store an integer value in a variable. And only thing we have to do here is close this part over here, close this part, add our plus symbol. We're concatenating age, right? And then we're going to add again over here, and we're going to add this semicolon. So as you can see, it's going to print first name is age years old. So let's run this to get our output. So as you can see, we get the same output. So it's very useful sometimes, like not sometimes, all the times it's very useful, but this is just an example. Of course, you're going to be using it for much more useful stuff, but as of now, this is just an example. And we have to get used to storing values inside variables. And with the int and string is not the only variables in out there. We can use ones to store, like for example, in an int, I'm just gonna call it num is equal to 12. We can only store integers in here. We can't store numbers that have decimal values. Like if you want to store the price of something, whatever, we can't store 12.45. We have to use what we call a double. That one allows us to store double values or floating point numbers or numbers that have decimal values. So when we run this and then we add num over there, when we run it, we get 12.45. Now we can use these numbers. We can add numbers together. We can divide them. We can multiply them, or whatever it is that we want to do with them. So if we want to add two numbers, you can create one. I'm going to call this num, and I'm going to set it equal to 12. And I'm going to create another one. Now this one, I'm going to call it num2. And then it's going to be equal to 9. And then what I'm going to do is write a print statement saying num plus num2, like this. So just like this, we can add these two numbers together. And let's wait for this to run. We get 21. So in case you're wondering what can we do with numbers, we can do a lot of things with numbers. And we can minus them using this minus sign. We can divide them, we can multiply. We can do, to divide, we use this symbol, this slash symbol. And when you run it, you get 1, but that's not the output we're hoping for, right? We're hoping for an output with a decimal point value. So what we have to do is change these. Instead of using integers, we're just going to change it to double. Now if we run it, we get a value with a decimal point, as you can see. So we can also, instead of storing this directly inside the print statement, we can just say double num3 or sum or whatever. We can call it anything, and then just store this in here. And then when we run it, we're just going to print sum in here. It's going to do the exact same thing. So I hope you guys are following, and I hope this isn't too much for you to grasp as of now. I just wanted to show you the importance of variables. And in essence, what you have to grasp from this lesson is how you can declare and assign variables. Like what type. If you want to store an integer, you use int, and then the name of your variable is equal to 12, you know, whatever it is you want to do. So that's all you need to grasp from this. If the adding and subtracting and dividing was too much for you, don't worry about it. It's not for this lesson. It's for the later stage. But as of this lesson, just grasp the concept of variables, how you can you declare them and assign values to them. And you can also do this. you can declare a variable like this and just close your statement, and then later on you can assign a number to it, like number is equal to 23. This also works, but I usually just do it all in one line. And you can also assign assign a value and then later on change it to whatever you want to, saying or using the same data type, using the same variable. Now you can change it to 34 or whatever it is you want to change it to later on. And then now let's run this. I'm going to run this part over here, and I'm going to run this part so I can show you that the values actually changed. Now as you can see, num was first 23, now num is 349. So you can actually change the value of your variable. So that's it for now. If there's anything else I've missed, then I will make a video about it on the next one. So thanks for tuning in. Please subscribe and hit the like button, and have fun.